What's up guys, SkyKevin here, and today we're going over the current state of Atlas with the new recent major update changes in Season 5. So, let's get started. To begin, looking at the Steam charts, Atlas has had a pretty substantial gain in the player base over the last month. Most specifically, on November 10th, we saw the player base jump from 1,100 players to around 3,000 at peak hours. This has so far held steady, most likely due to the much anticipated trade update that was released on November 11th. The trade update was, and still is, the master plan for Atlas to get players back on the ocean and to move the meta to more sailing and ship combat. They began with farmhouses, connected those to warehouses, and then created markets to allow for trading resources between islands and grids. Nearby each of these islands, they generated control points, which were basically flat pieces of land where players could only build defensive cannon towers to protect the control point from being captured. The plan was that players who captured these control points would essentially be able to blockade any trade around a grid. Further, they can increase the tax rate and gain passive gold via the trading station if a ship were to be traveling through that grid. I believe the motive behind this system was to incentivize companies to capture as many of these control points as they can in order to generate a good passive gold income based on their area of influence on the map. Unfortunately, as of making this video, the trade system is still quite unstable and doesn't really generate enough gold for companies to see any value in it. Another change that really affected this was the change of the cost to larger ships. Now that a schooner costs 5,000 gold to make one, many companies are using them sparingly or unwilling to just send them out for another 10 or 20 gold income per day. Personally, I'm okay with the changes to gold costs for ships. As I mentioned in my previous videos, I was getting very tired of the meta being galleons versus other galleons due to the overall strength and speed difference from them to other ships. This way, not only does it add variety to the meta, but it also increases the inherent value of gold, which in theory should have legitimized the trade system. So far, I haven't seen any companies really looking to dominate the map, but I'm really hoping that this will be the meta as they adjust the trade system gold rewards and effect it has on taxes. So far though, the trade system, although implemented, did not include actual NPC ships going from route to route. I don't know exactly what's going to be planned for these ships and whether they'll be relatively basic to sink and drop some sort of gold or loot box, but I'm hoping that it won't just be a simple rudimentary static ship that just floats on by similar to that of an NPC merchant ship that you've seen already. In an ideal world, I'd like to see some kind of templated ship with a crew of NPCs that can be boarded and fought with melee or cannoned down the way a typical player ship battle would operate. As long as it's at least a little bit better than the current and extremely predictable AI that ghost ships use. If it's not, we're going to see even more ships running full back cannon builds to aggro, run away, and shoot behind them without ever getting hit. Another very important change I wanted to mention was the modification to barrel bombs. I've actually put off doing this video specifically because I was waiting for the developers to come to a conclusion of fixing barrel bombs. I was honestly very upset by the changes that they made last season to make them loadable into every cannon and essentially the number one spam tool for every and any ship in the game. I don't play Atlas for the ground content anymore because it pretty much always ends up being a case of player versus Stonewall or player versus Puckle, and I've found that the barrel meta pretty much just ruined ship combat entirely. That's just my opinion, but luckily they've decided to change the barrels once again, and in the most recent patch, now every barrel costs 80 gold and can only be loaded into catapults. Further, the damage against large stone walls has been reduced by about 40%. All in all, I don't really believe this is going to be a good fix for barrels. I would much prefer something like players having to load themselves into a catapult carrying the barrel and having to launch themselves onto another ship to have it explode. I know that they actually had this capability in Season 2, and you could even do this while using a glider. I'd love to know what you would think of a barrel meta change like this, because I'm sure it's something that has pushed a lot of players away previously, and perhaps this will help them with that problem and bring some of those players back. Finally, I wanted to touch on the new structure, the armored dock. This is something that they just released and has been asked for from the player base for a very long time. Essentially, it's supposed to be a dock that you can build, store, and enclose your ship in safely. It is large enough to fit a galleon, costs 500 gold per day, and has 300,000 health. This is the largest ship dock version, and they have stated that there will be other iterations for smaller ships, likely with less of a gold per day cost and less health. Another additional small change I would like to see in this regard is to increase the actual health of the building that these have. In my experience, a large shipyard already has 300,000 health, and I've seen a galleon with large cannons completely erase that in under 60 seconds. I think to truly protect these solo players, it would be best to greatly increase the health of these docks, or to reduce the damage that they take from all forms of cannonballs and explosives. Essentially, I think I would be happier if it had something along the lines of 1,000,000 HP, because players are already paying to have their boat stored there, and it's docked, so the only real kind of content that an attacking ship would have is raiding an AFK player. Really quick, I decided to actually go into single player mode to test this out to see how difficult it was to destroy one of these shipyards, and found it was incredibly easy. It only took me about 884 cannon shots from a ship without any points into damage or any blueprinted cannons on it. That works out to 34 volleys if you have 26 cannons on one side of a galleon. If you were to have that set up for 200% damage cannons and a 200% damage spec ship, that would only end up taking 9 to 10 volleys to actually kill this shipyard. So going back on my previous statement, I think it might even need way more health than that to be able to be sufficient to stop people from griefing, especially from Zergs who are going to have these kind of resources and roll up to a lawless island, see this kind of shipyard, and easily take it out. Lastly, I think the cost of the dock should be reduced, at least when it gets to the smaller iterations of it for the solo players. Of course, 1200 alloy is easy for a large company to acquire. However, if a solo player has to hand harvest that, it will take quite a lot of time and effort to come up with resources. And imagine a large Zerg company comes with a galleon and melts all of that away in a couple of volleys. Plus, like I said, you're paying a daily gold input to keep that ship safe. So, in my opinion, as long as you have the gold, your ship should be storable safely while you're offline, unless someone wants to waste a massive amount of resources and time to do so. Otherwise, there are a few balance changes to things like weight of the resources or gaining experience from Army of the Damned. So for this month, I can say I like the direction that Atlas is attempting to go with the game, and I just think there are a few small balance changes that they can make to the current system to really make things thrive. Likely, they will progress, as the community team has said when trading was released that they wanted to start with conservative numbers when it comes to the gold increase of trade routes, so my guess is that they will ramp it up over time to see at what point the players will actually embrace this new meta. I'm excited to really feel like a pirate again by capturing these outposts and fighting off enemy fleets as they mobilize to prevent me from blockading their island. With the new dock as a single player, if I can immediately take my boat out without all the usual preparation beforehand, indeed I would love the ability to do this and log off for the night on a lawless island 8 grids away from my company's main island. If I have that assurance that I'll be able to log out in a place like that, it would save me literal hours of sailing time on the way back to my island, and really incentivize me to actually explore and sail around the globe. I don't know if other players feel this way, but I often find that most people don't really want to sail further than a couple of grids from their home tile, because they know they'll have to sail all the way back afterwards. I really do like these changes and hope they progress further to truly reinvigorate the game. As far as player numbers go, if that is any indication, I'd say they're doing a good job so far. A few more tweaks and balance to really make gold scarce and an important resource would do a lot to keep players interested and a solid goal in mind, making the driving incentive of the game trying to accumulate as much wealth as you possibly can, kind of like a traditional pirate. I'm excited to see and fight many of you out there on the water as well. That's it for today. Check out some of my other Atlas videos and subscribe for more content like this and other MMOs. Leave a comment down below if you have a question, and I'll try to respond to all of them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.